Welcome. My name is Kim Cicchini. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate Communications for SolarWinds MSP, and this is the 5-step plan to market your business presentation on the MSP Institute. Welcome. So before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about me. It is relevant to this presentation and not just so that you can learn all about me for the sake of learning about me. But I used to run my own business. For almost 13 years, I ran a marketing consultancy. And I'm ashamed to say that I was like the shoemaker with the worst shoes. You've heard that old adage. And it's true. When you're running your own business, it can be really difficult to make time for marketing. But I'm hoping that you come away from this presentation with the understanding that it's not an option for you. You need to be able to market your business so that you can succeed at the level that you want and ultimately that you deserve. And marketing can help you get there. So we're going to go through a couple of things in this presentation. The first thing we're going to go through is we're going to take a look at what are the competitive angles to this and how do we position ourselves against those folks that we call our competitors. I want to challenge you to think a little bit differently, though, about this and think of it more along the lines of co-opetition, because in this MSP industry, we have a lot to learn from each other. Next, we're going to look at creating your message. We're going to talk a lot about that as a foundational piece of your marketing plan. Then we're going to look at how to identify your audience, then your channels, and finally, how do you put it all together and create a plan and then execute it and measure it. So let's start with the basics. What is the purpose of marketing? It's really not complicated. Marketing is all about putting your message in front of the right people in the right way at the right time. In other words, it's reaching out to people who hopefully want to hear about what you have to offer and then making sure they're hearing about it at the time they want to hear about it. That's pretty much straightforward what marketing is. So you've got to know your message, your market, and then how do you go about getting in front of these people? What are the right tactics? The first thing and the foundational thing, and what we'll focus on quite a bit in this presentation, is the message. This is all about the value proposition. And, I like to say, be careful not to fall into the features, functions trap. What is that? Well, it's that trap that you get caught in when you're unable to rise up and tell people the why instead of the what. So while you're watching this, instead of looking at this little dude on the mountain with his flag, I want you to close your eyes for a minute. I want you to imagine, this is something that I would just like to do anyway, all the people who created shrink wrap. We're going to put them in a little room together. We're going to gather them all together and we're going to put them in a room. And we're going to give them all food and beverage items that have been shrink wrapped. We're going to shut the door and we're going to leave them in there for at least 12 hours. We're not going to give them a pair of scissors. We're not going to give them a knife. We're not going to give them any kind of cutting instrument at all. Now, you're beginning to see that they're getting very frustrated because we have a one-way mirror and we can see these things. And I want you to imagine now that you go to the door, open it up, and bring them a nice, sharp set of scissors. That's how your customers need to think about you. You need to be the scissors for them. It's pretty simple. You've got to help them understand the value that you deliver to them. They don't care what color the handles of the scissor are. They don't care what the blade is made out of. They do care that it works and that it does the job for them. So make it relevant to them, make sure it specifies what the benefits are, and make sure it's differentiated, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the right people. You probably know from selling, whether you're doing any marketing or not, that the decision maker and point of contact are not always the same person. I was going to say right person, but that might have been correct as well. And why is that? Well, they have different focuses, right? The decision maker cares a lot about the spend. They care a lot about, they want to know what they're going to get out of this. They're typically a little risk adverse. The point of contact may care about service. They may want to save time. They may just be a gatekeeper that you've got to get through before you can even reach the decision maker. So just as in sales, you have to think about marketing in the same way. You've got to think about who do I need to reach through marketing? And it might be both of these sets of folks, and it might be even another set, maybe someone who's going to serve as a referral for you. You've got to think about how to market to those folks in the right way. How can you reach them in a way that helps them understand what's in it for them? Going back to the scissors. The right way. There's a lot of different ways that folks can find you in this digital age. Of course, we know all about Google, word of mouth. Some folks still use local directories. They're looking on Reddit. They're looking for referrals. Lots of ways that you can reach people that you want to market to, and we'll delve a little bit more into that in the presentation a few slides down. And then how do you reach them? If they're not looking for you, what are the different ways that you can reach out and get in front of them versus them coming to you? And then how can you build trust? This really comes down to building messaging, content, and educational materials that help position you as a partner. Your prospects, your customers need to understand the value that you deliver across everything that you communicate. The right time. Marketing, if it's done correctly, it should ease attention. Again, think back to the scissor analogy. It should ease attention. It should make you want to buy something because you recognize that it's going to solve a problem for you. But there's a lot of noise that can get in the way, and timing can be one of those noise contributors. Be very, very selective about when you market to people. Now, this could be driven by something as simple as it's the holidays. Probably not a good time to reach out, but right before the holidays is a good time to reach out because things have quieted down. It might be that this is the end of the procurement cycle if you're selling to the education vertical, and you don't want to reach out during that procurement cycle when it's closing because you're too late at that point, right? They've already made the decision that the train has left the station, so to speak. Think about the timing, and when you're reaching out with awareness, building an interest, creating that desire, and ultimately calling for an action to be taken, if the timing isn't right, then all of those things are for naught. Now, we're going to change that term again to cooperative research. That's because we have a lot of things to learn from each other, right? I mean, we know that we don't necessarily have to be the first mousetrap. In fact, I would say that's a horrible goal. Why do you want to spend your time both educating the market and selling to the market? That's a really difficult thing to do. Ask anybody who created the first anything, right? We can go back and we can look at some of the greatest technologies on the planet that didn't make it because they were first, right? They didn't get the benefit of learning from what worked and didn't work and then had the opportunity to come out and be better, but not necessarily first. So I'm going to tell you that you don't have to be first, and you also don't have to be best. You have to be differentiated based on what you're selling. So when you're doing your research, look at the kinds of terms that map to what you're selling and what you're offering, and then take a look at how your co-operators are presenting those same services and say, what do I do differently? Is it a type of partnered approach I take? Is it specific years of experience I've had in a particular vertical? Is it something that I do differently that's my secret sauce, and how do I communicate that secret sauce? And make sure that you are able to understand those value differences and communicate them clearly. Creating your message. We've talked about this, so let's walk through sort of these 5 steps now on how you actually create that value proposition. This is actually an exercise that I encourage you to do. I want you to sit down and ask yourself these specific questions. First of all, why is this relevant? How do I solve my customers' or prospects' specific problems? Write it down. Explain how you plan to do that, and make sure you're able to communicate it without too much features, functions, right? How exactly do I solve it? Now, this can be a little bit more technically driven, right? I might offer backup, remote monitoring management, a security suite, and that's okay. But when you're writing down each of those things, I want you to challenge yourself now by adding on the benefit. What am I solving? I'm allowing them to do what by backing up their stuff? I'm allowing them to stay focused on their business. I'm allowing them to not be afraid of losing things that are important to their business. I'm allowing them to grow and thrive because I'm taking care of the IT in the background. Tell a story. Ask yourself, what stories do I have to share that these folks might be interested in? If you need to, go to your current customers. Ask them to share those stories. Write them down. I was on the speech team in college, and we had a certain category called impromptu speaking. We were given a quotation from someone famous, and we were asked to sit down and then kind of within 20 seconds, believe it or not, come up with a speech that we stood up and did for 15 minutes based on this quotation that we read. Well, how was I able to do that, right? Because I kept a little Rolodex of stories that I was able to tap into that I could tell and share that were relevant to that quotation. You've got to be able to do the same thing, because when you're marketing, when you're selling, you need to be able to pull from that Rolodex, and I'm sorry I'm using that old term. Yes, I'm that old. You want to be able to pull from that Rolodex of stories and have some things to tell. People respond to storytelling. It's relatable. Next, your experience. Ask yourself, how am I different from my co-opetors? What do I do that sets me apart? Again, you need to think through. I challenge you to think of 3 things as you're doing your research that really does set you apart. Again, it could be something about your vertical focus. It could be something about your years of experience. It could be because you don't care what vertical someone's in, right? You're able to reach out and be a master of IT for anybody who wants or needs it. Think about those things and how you want to communicate them. And then focus on the services piece. You've got your experience, you've got your services to back it up, and now you've got your entire value proposition built out. So before we move to the next slide, I do this before I give this presentation every time so it's fresh. I did some research, and actually these are MSPs that are right here in my backyard where I'm based in Durham. I'm not going to tell you who they are. But I'm going to tell you what they say about themselves, what they position as their value propositions. And I want you to think about this before we jump to these next slides. So one says, this is very top of their website, for 24/7 support, backup management, superior antivirus management, and ransomware protection for businesses, call us. Wow. Not so sure I feel so encouraged to call them. A little bit of a so what thing going on there. Now, the other company says, business should be about focus, not frustration. ABC IT Services, and that's not their real name, ABC IT Services helps you get back to doing what you're best at. Call us. I think you can see the difference there, right, in terms of how they're positioning what they're selling, features, functions versus value. So with that in mind, we're going to take a look at some examples, and you don't have to be embarrassed because hopefully you're watching this presentation in the privacy of somewhere where you can vote and not be ridiculed if you get it wrong. So I want you to take a look at these examples. Here we have Continuum Financial Group. Take a look at what they have to say here. I'll give you a few minutes to do that, or maybe not a full few minutes, but a couple of seconds anyway. They say that they back themselves based on integrity, service, and commitment. Our formula for helping people plan for their financial future. Welcome to Continuum Financial Group. We invite you to use the market summary section of the site to view market data, calculate certain financial objectives, and to find out more about financial planning and investing. Thank you for visiting our website. Do you think that's value-driven or not? If you said not, at least from my standpoint, you're right. They really didn't do a good job of communicating the value they're delivering. Now, I know you can say to yourself, this is hard because who exactly are they selling to? Anybody and everybody. Bingo. They've got to have a value proposition that reaches the market in a very broad-based way. Let's take a look at the next one. This is all about the Dollar Shave Club. So, they've got some pretty funny ads out there. You may have seen some of them, and they're telling us that they have what we need to look, feel, and smell our best. Get your risk-free starter set now. What do you think? Value-driven or not? Well, I give it a check mark because I think they do a pretty good job. I mean, I definitely want to look, feel, and smell my best. I don't know about you. So we're going to give them a check mark. They've reached out to me, and they've helped me understand what they're going to do for me, very personalized. And again, they're pretty broad-based, right? But they achieved what they were trying to do in communicating the value of what they sell. Let's look at the next one. FreshBooks. Never heard of them, but there's a ton of these, small business accounting folks out there, and that's what they tell us we are. small business accounting software that makes billing painless. The all-new FreshBooks is accounting software that makes running your small business easy, fast, and secure. Spend less time on accounting and more time doing the work you love. What do you think? Value-driven or not? Well, I gave that one a check mark. Now, I do have to admit they're a little bit so what in the way they open up their commentary, but they do go on to say that they're going to help me spend less time on accounting, they're going to make it painless, and I can spend more time doing the work I love. So I think they did a pretty good job there, pretty good job overall. Next one. Well, here we have another online meeting service, and they tell us that you can host an online meeting or webinar, and it's fast and free. Sign up for a free account right now to host a meeting and share your screen up to 5 times faster than other solutions. And we go on and on. Ooh, they even say, yes, frickin' analytics for your meetings. Instantly understand how guests are interacting with your content. Wow. Value-driven or not, what do you think? I'm going to give that a nod. I think they failed. So hopefully these examples help you understand. And again, you know what? You may have put a check on some of these that I gave negatives, and you may have given an X to some that I gave checks, and that's okay, because marketing is not 100% black and white. In fact, it's very gray, right? So based on your individual needs and your goals and your desires, you may found some of these to be value-driven, and that is certainly okay. So now we're going to talk about identifying your audience. Hopefully you've already done some of this work because it should map to who you're selling to. What you don't want to do is go outside of a market that you're selling to just because you can reach that market. This is a really important point with marketing, because once you open up the marketing Pandora's box, so to speak, you're going to find that it's very easy to want to market to everybody. Well, I should go to this event because there's going to be 20,000 people there. You know, I might want to go ahead and advertise on this site because they get so many click-throughs on their ads. Well, are the people visiting that site or at that event the people you want to market to? If not, then it's probably not a good use of your marketing budget. So identify your audience. Do you, for example, focus on SMBs, or do you go more for larger enterprises? Are you industry specific, or do you take a more of a ubiquitous approach across all verticals? Do you tend to reach out to the decision maker, or do you want to reach out to the point of contact, or do you need to reach out to both? How do you answer that question? Look at your sales record. Ask yourself which has worked better for you in the specific industries in which you work. And make sure when you've figured out how you're going to map this audience of the folks you're marketing to the audience of the folks that you're selling to, that again, you're keeping that value message in mind and what is going to be communicated to them in the best way that works for them. So now identify your channels. I was at a conference recently, and they had what I thought were these little Roadrunner dudes running around, but I found out they were actually some kind of other bird. But to me, they were Roadrunners because they were just going all over the place. They had a little thing on top of their head. And this is how I think it's easy to feel like one of those Roadrunners, just running around. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to go online? Am I supposed to put an ad out? Am I supposed to do email? Am I supposed to do Facebook, Twitter? What kind of social things? I don't even know what half of these social things are. Or should I go more traditional, old school, send something in the mail? Put an ad in the paper? Do people still do that? It can be overwhelming. So here is what I recommend. Pick 2 things to focus on first and build a budget around those 2 things. Make sure that you are focused on doing a few things right instead of doing a bunch of things wrong and spending a bunch of money and not getting any results. When you think about the digital landscape as a whole, I want you to think about these 3 things. It's great for local and non-local prospects and clients because it has greater reach. It's much easier to measure success because there's all kinds of tools available to do that, and it is typically less expensive. That might be shocking to you, but it's typically less expensive than the traditional way of doing things. Now, if you're going to look at the traditional way, it can be great for local clients or prospects if you really want to have that local touch, but it is harder to quantify success. So if you're going to do traditional, I encourage you to make sure you have a digital tie back, some kind of URL, some kind of call to action that can drive them back to your digital environment. Your website strategy. Do not forget about your website. I just read you some things from a couple of websites. One of them I think clearly put a lot of thought into how they were communicating it. The other I think needed a little bit more work. 75% of users admit that they make judgments about a company's credibility based on their website design alone. This is no longer the welcome mat. This is the place where people go to make decisions about you and your company. Think about it like your Match.com profile, if you will. People need to be able to be convinced that you're worth working with. So this doesn't have to break the bank. That's the good news. There are tons of templates available, from even our old go-to WordPress to newer things like Wix and Squarespace, where you can find templates and create a website for under $10,000 in most instances. Again, it doesn't have to break the bank. So make sure you're taking the time to make yourself look as professional as possible and relatable as possible. A couple of things to keep in mind about your website, other than the old fact that if you don't exist online, you don't exist, is that design is critical, and design is not just about the pretty colors. It's about the content, making sure, again, that you're writing to them and not at them, so you want to be careful about that. It can be very easy when you're in the technology arena, I think, to get lost in, well, our own technical stuff, right? We forget that the people that we're selling to may have no clue what in the world we are talking about. I do not have a large technical vocabulary, and I don't want you to go over my head to the point where I am just going to click and leave your website because I don't understand what you're saying. Take them on a buying journey through your site. And what we mean by this is we want them to be able to find their way easily to get to that call to action, to something they care about. And again, remember to articulate the why, not just the what. You do want to use high-resolution logos, and certainly you don't want to go pirate something out there and grab it from Google and drop it into your website. Not only is it not going to look good, but it ain't going to be legal. We don't want that. Also, proofread. Proofreading is critical, and we're talking about everything from text to your links. I'll tell you another little story. I started my first job at the American Society of Interior Designers when I was 21. I was making the big bucks, and I was doing the newsletter, and this was back when we had DOS. Yes, this is dating me, I know. So we didn't have a lot of the same tools we have now to do sort of automated proofreading. But the title of my department was the Government and Public Affairs Department. Well, I put the newsletter together. I was really excited. My boss came in the next day. I worked really late. I, showed it to her, told her I had sent it out. Everything was done. Voila. She looked at me and she said, "Kim, you forgot the L in public." I'm going to let that just sit right there for a minute. So this was not the Government and XXX department like the newsletter now said. And it was a little embarrassing. And guess what? Spell check wouldn't have caught that because that's a word. So proofread. Also your links. If I go to a website of someone that I want to buy technology services from and I get a 404 error, you can bet your bottom dollar I am not doing business with you, period. So make sure you take the time to make sure that your website looks clean, that it's easy to read, and then it takes your customers on a buying journey in both words and design. Don't forget mobile. Chances are that when someone is searching for you, they're not doing it in front of their desktop. They're probably doing it on a mobile device. That's how most of us search nowadays. I mean, I can be in front of my computer, and I pick up my phone to look for something on Amazon.com. It's just a natural instinct, right? Because the phone is always with me. The computer isn't. So make sure that you are keeping in mind that 50% of users say they won't recommend a business with a poorly designed mobile site. Why? It's too freaking hard. That's why. Take a look at this university, DEC University. Look at how they are beautiful when you're looking at them on the left side here on the screen on the computer, but when you move to mobile, it is very hard to get around. I've got to scroll down, across. If I'm on an airplane looking at this, I'm probably seasick at this point. Now let's go to the next one. This is mobily responsive. This is WebMD. And this is fantastic because if I'm a hypochondriac and all of a sudden I see something weird on my arm, I have got to get that information right away, right? I'm going to pick up my phone. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to make sure that I'm not on my way to the hospital. Instead, I'm on my way to the CVS. So this is why it's important for you to think just like business-to-consumer websites think, because people are going to be looking for you in this day and age on their mobile device, and you want to make sure they not only find you, but they find what they need on your website and that you're able to take them through that journey just as effectively as you would if they were on a traditional PC or Mac. Now, let's talk about how you plan, execute, and measure. We've looked at a lot of different things in today's webinar, so let's walk through some examples. Make sure you set some goals. Goals for marketing are varied. You might say, you know what, I don't think people really know about my business. I thought they did, but whenever I go somewhere and I give someone a card, they're like, oh, I didn't know you were here, and I'm talking to a lot of folks out there, and maybe I need to build some awareness for my business first. Great goal. Foundationally, if people don't know who you are, they aren't going to be as respectful of you, and they aren't going to want to buy from you. So let's say that's your goal. All right, so how am I going to do that? Well, I think getting in front of some local organizations to raise my business visibility would be great. Terrific. What do the tactics look like to do that? I am going to make it a tactic in my plan to go to one networking event each quarter, and I'm going to join a business group in a local city. Great. You've given yourself some very achievable tactics that you can measure against. Now, what's my target market? So how do I find the right networking events? Well, we talked about this earlier. I've identified my audience as small businesses with fewer than 50 employees because I know this is my sweet spot. What are my key messages? The best choice in IT management for local businesses. I want those businesses to know that I am all about them. What's my vehicle? Well, I'm going to do the networking. I'm going to do some direct and personal selling, and I'm going to go with Twitter for my social platform. Now, how am I going to measure for success? Make sure you set these KPIs up front, because if you don't put this in your plan, you won't accomplish nearly as much as you can out of the gate. I am going to get 50 net new leads from the same area the business is located because I really want to focus on local. Make this your KPI, but don't set yourself up to fail either. Let's not try to go for 1,000 net new leads when you're just getting started. And finally, map it to a realistic budget. You could go crazy with this kind of thing if you're not careful, so make sure your budget is realistic and that it's in line with what's achievable for you. Now that you've done all of that, you can actually build the comprehensive plan. All right, so I'm going to, on this date, going to do some Google AdWords, some pay-per-click ads. My objective is to drive a targeted audience I want them to fill out this form. Here's my messages. Here's my channel. And then my measurement is 25 signups. You're going to do this for each of these activities that you're doing built on this model that we just looked at, and then you're going to have a plan that can stretch out through the entire year. If you'd like it, I suggest that you look at a quarter up front as opposed to a whole entire year, because if you're doing it right, you should be shifting and changing things as needed to make sure you're getting the most success out of what you do. Remember that failure is not failure. Failure is a learning experience for you to succeed. You've got to be able to know what you're doing wrong in order to be able to do something better next time and ultimately drive better results. So we've looked at a lot of things. Measurement is definitely what you want to live and die by when it comes to your marketing KPIs. It holds you accountable. Again, it helps you identify those gaps. As we just said, it helps you set your budget. Did I have the right budget? Did I do the right activity at all? Was this just a waste of time? If it was, there was no need to cry over spilled milk. Wipe it up and move forward. You can find a different beverage the next time that works better for you. Maybe it's a glass of wine, maybe it's a cup of tea. Whatever it is, we're going to make sure it works for you in the right way going forward. So start with small basics, such as I'm going to measure the number of people who visited my website. I'm going to measure the actual number of press placements I got, if PR is something that you're willing to do and put some time into. I'm going to look at how many leads I got from the event, both live and virtual. Stick to some of these basic KPIs instead of trying to look at really sophisticated metrics that you may not even understand at this juncture. And as your program grows, you can add some more of those to the mix. There are some tools to help you, particularly when it comes to the digital landscape. Look, you're already doing technology. This stuff's not rocket science. You can absolutely learn Google Analytics if you don't know it already, because data tells a story. It tells you what content people are interested in. It tells you how much activity you're getting on the links that you're promoting. It tells you if people are interested in visiting your site in the first place. Start slow, start with a baseline, just like you would with all of your sales metrics, right? Build the same kind of marketing metrics that can grow over time. With all of that said, what do I do next? Let's just kind of recap what we've looked at during today's presentation. Research your co-opeters, craft your message in a way that's value-driven. Again, always strive to be the scissors. Make sure you know who you're marketing to, get the right channels in the mix, and then create a plan that you can execute and measure for success. That wraps up our presentation for today. I encourage you to join our MSP Institute webinar channel and take a look at some of the other things that we have to offer. And as always, you can go to SolarWindsMSP.com to get lots more information, including resources for security, GDPR, and more. Thank you.